In the last session, we framed data governance as decision enablement, not a control function. But here's the reality: even when you understand that shift, financial services organizations are still some of the hardest in the world to get it to stick. And it's not because people don't care, it's because the structure itself makes it harder. Hi, I'm Ash, and welcome to the Data Governance Office. I've spent almost a decade working in data governance across financial and healthcare organizations, environments where regulation is high, complexity is real, and margin for error is low. Over that time, I've seen how governance succeeds, how it fails, and why it often struggles to gain traction with executives in complex corporations. This channel is for data governance professionals working within those complex corporate structures, people who know that the work matters, who are doing the right things, but are still finding themselves fighting for time, attention, and influence. If you've ever felt like governance is treated more as paperwork instead of leadership, then this is the space for you. The why financial services is different. If you've ever worked in healthcare or financial institutions like I have, you've quickly come to realize that regulation changes the game. In financial services, data isn't just operational. It feeds regulatory reporting, capital and liquidity calculations, risk weighted assets, customer communications, and executive and board reporting. And here's what makes the difference: when a marketing dashboard is wrong, you just adjust it. When a regulatory submission is wrong, you trigger remediation, audit scrutiny, reputational exposure, and sometimes even capital impact. The tolerance for error here is fundamentally different. That is why governance matters more here, not because the regulators say so, but because the consequence curve is much steeper. Let's break down why governance struggles specifically in financial corporations. First, accountability is fragmented. Data flows across multiple domains. The data might originate in one system, be transformed in another, and then be consumed by three different business units. So when something goes wrong, the question becomes, who owns it? And if ownership is unclear, remediation slows down. Governance matters here because clear ownership shortens issue resolution time and reduces regulatory exposure. Two, the same data feeds multiple high-stake decisions. Take a single element, say something that feeds a capital calculation. That data might influence regulatory reporting, internal performance metrics, and investor communication. If definition drifts across teams, the organization doesn't just get inconsistent reporting, it gets inconsistent decision making. Governance matters because alignment prevents contradictory decisions at senior levels. That is executive risk. Three, speed versus control tension. Financial organizations operate under pressure. There are quarterly results, regulatory submissions, and product launches. When time is tight, which it always is, governance can look like friction, and friction loses unless governance is framed as preventing rework and escalation. Governance matters because catching an issue early can prevent restatements, escalation to executives, regulatory follow ups, and loss of leadership confidence. Early governance protects speed long term. Four, regulatory exposure is non-linear. In many industries, a data issue is an operational inconvenience. In financial services, a data issue can escalate quickly. One misreported data point can trigger regulatory inquiries, require root cause analysis, expand into broader reviews, and lead to remediation programs. Governance matters because it reduces probability of high impact tail risk events. Executives understand tail risk. You need to speak that language. So if it's harder, what actually works? It's not enterprise-wide perfection, and it's not boiling the ocean. What works here is precise governance. You focus on the data where the consequence is highest. Ask yourself this question: if the data was wrong tomorrow, what happens? Would a regulator care? Would a board report be affected? Would a financial decision change? Or would a customer be impacted? If the answer is yes, this is where governance earns its seat. You stabilize high impact data first. You formalize ownership there. You implement monitoring there. You build credibility there. And once executives see that governance reduces material risk, that is when momentum builds. If you ever felt that governance is way harder than the textbooks suggest, it's because the textbooks don't account for legacy systems, matrix structures, regulatory scrutiny, and commercial pressure. But complexity is not a reason to retreat. It's a reason to be strategic. Governance succeeds in financial institutions when it's risk aligned, materially driven, and outcome focused, not documentation heavy, not framework obsessed, and not theoretical. In the next office session, we are going to go one layer deeper because even when you focus on the right data, many data governance professionals still struggle with influence. So we will break down how to translate governance into executive language, how to stop leading with lineage and start leading with exposure. Knowing what matters is step one. Communicating in the way that leaders act on is step two. I'll see you in the next session.